There seems to be a phenomenon in golf, and it affects all skill levels from novice all the way up to world class players, and nobody is immune. And that is that you can play one of your best rounds, and then for almost no apparent reason, a short time after, for amateurs, and the professional level seems to be a gradual process. But your next round, or all of a sudden, you can't explain how it's very difficult for the club face to find the ball and go in the direction that you intend it to go. In fact, it goes in a complete opposite direction sometimes. And this phenomenon, so to speak, seems to happen without much of a explanation. I mean, you can talk to sports psychologists, you can talk to swing gurus, and you'll get a multitude of various reasons. But for each individual golfer, sometimes it's hard to pinpoint. Well, my guest today experienced the latter, to where he was playing professional golf and went from playing what he had considered to be okay to all of a sudden the simplest of things as far as the mental approach changed, and he went on to win about 15 events in that year. His name is Mark Silvers. He's a former professional golfer. He's played at some of the highest level, at the highest level. Korn Ferry Tour. He's played on the PGA Tour. He's won on the Mackenzie Tour, which for some of you who don't know is the Canadian Tour. Latin America, and all over various different tours around the country. And he really sheds some light into the thinking process of a professional golfer from week to week, from season to season, and from year to year. We talk about, again, going back to what might cause something to get triggered to make you either go into a slump or start playing better than you ever thought before. We talk about the dreaded Q school and why second stage for so long was getting through that was so important. How frightening and harrowing Q school can be for so many, as it turns out to be maybe one of the most difficult tournaments a professional golfer ever plays in. And then just about anything else you can imagine that relates to professional golf. So Mark is a great guy. He born and bred in Savannah. He's one of a long line of great golfers from Savannah and the Low Country, and a very endearing person. That's going to come across right away, and you're going to get a very good understanding of why he is liked and adored by so many. So just a great episode. I really enjoyed talking to him. I think you're really going to enjoy listening to what he has to say. Again, he really pulls back the curtain on the mental side and what goes through the mind of somebody playing at the most elite levels of this game. So grab your favorite chair, grab your favorite beverage, adult or otherwise, sit back, relax. But first, please give a big, warm Golf 360 welcome to my guest today, professional golfer, Mr. Mark Silvers. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Golf 360 podcast. I'm the host, Pete Popovich. So you may be asking yourself, what is Golf 360? And Golf 360 is a show that was designed to introduce you to people associated with the game of golf to help you improve not only at your game, but also your life. Almost all of our guests are from within the industry in some way, shape, or form, but some of the guests we have are from outside the industry, and it mainly revolves around the business world with a few others scattered in here and there. Now, all of the guests that we have a few things in common. One, they all were highly successful and accomplished in their field. Two, each has something to pass along that will help you in your game and your life. And three, they were all more than willing to give back by passing along the things that they use to help them in their career, and even some of the mistakes that they made so that others don't make them in their journey. So I hope you find listening to them as enjoyable as I did interviewing them, and that each and every one of you benefits from the information that they so willingly and graciously pass along. Hey everybody, I want to give a big shout out to a new sponsor of the Golf 360 podcast, and that's Affinity Wealth Management Group. We all work exceptionally hard for our money, and none of us can afford to let that fall into the dark abyss of the big box financial service firms and their jack of all trades and master of none mantra, which basically means you become a number within a cookie cutter model that's also often accompanied by massive fees. Your future deserves more than average returns and little attention. At Affinity Wealth Management, they ensure that your financial goals receive highly individualized, tailored attention from experts, not just advisors, who are in the industry to be great and not average. As a client of Affinity Wealth, you receive a customized solution to your customized life, keeping in mind your family's financial situation, values, and risk tolerance. Call Affinity Wealth today for a no-cost consultation with one of their experts at 724-754-8200. Again, that's 724-754-8200. Or you can also check them out on the web at www.affinitywealthmg.com. That's AFFINITYWEALTHMG.com. This podcast is brought to you in part by Just Thrive Probiotic. You may be surprised to learn that your digestive system is the key to creating and maintaining the quality of your physical, mental, and emotional health, and it's one of the body's most essential systems. That's why the majority of nutritionists today highly recommend probiotics as an indispensable nutritional supplement. As a discriminating consumer, you've probably been searching for a probiotic that is proven, potent, and effective, and you found it. Just Thrive is your best choice for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Just Thrive Probiotic captures the power of hundreds of thousands of years of nature's design with a specialized bacillus strain formulation that guarantees survivability through the stomach and upper digestive system. Supports optimum gut health, digestive health, immune health, and delivers antioxidants. Great for adults, kids, and the whole family. Use promo code GOLF360 at www.thriveprobiotic.com for 10% off your order. All right, we're here with the Playboy of Savannah, also a professional golfer, and now pickleball sensation, Mr. Mark Silvers. Mark, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And roughly half of that is true, and I'm going to let the people figure out which half is true and which half is not.
Rumor has it you are big into pickleball now. Is that true?
That is correct. Yeah. I, along with, it's countless other people, seem to have gotten hooked on this wacky little sport that seems to be taking over the world.
And you play mostly over at Savannah Golf Club?
I do. Yeah.
What did they tear down to put in the pickleball court?
So we had one hard court. And unbeknownst to me, I was traveling, this was 2018, 2019. Unbeknownst to me, they put taped some lines down, and it got popular enough at the club, to where they converted, our one hard court into 4 pickleball courts. I had no idea what it was, until a buddy of mine introduced it to me. But yeah, and now since then they've converted another one of our clay courts into 4 more pickleball courts, and down the road already have plans for 4 more. We're building an absolute dynasty.
So as we were talking before we came on, a number of our buddies over there, they sent me some questions to ask you, and one of them was, are you going to go pro, or are you just going to remain the unpaid assistant pickleball pro at Savannah Golf Club?
You know what? I think the honor is being the unpaid assistant. I'm going to go with that, considering I've been lucky enough to be around some of the best pickleball players in the world, and I would not score a point on any of them, no matter how good I get. So I'm going to say it's, kind of the Bobby Jones thing, going to do the honorable thing and be an amateur, and I'm just going to stick with that rationale.
That sounds fair enough. It's funny that you brought that up about guys who are really, really good, and you were one of those people in golf, and we're going to get into that tonight. But I was goofing around on YouTube last night and came across this video of what was his name? He was he played for the Celtics, Scalabrine.
Okay.
Brian Scalabrine, big dude, about 6'9" or 10, I think, redhead. And there was a thing that I guess they started a show or something like that. He and some guys that they call it the Scallenge for Scalabrine in the challenge, and they basically took. They had one guy that was Division I ball player, played at Syracuse. Then there was another guy that played, I think, in Australia, pro basketball. And then there was like a YouTube sensation that was like a semi-pro somewhere. And he played one-on-one against each of them. And the whole point was to illustrate how good an NBA player is, even if they're like ride the bench or they're 8th on the roster. And of all those players, I think the average that he beat them was 11-2.
Yeah.
they couldn't stop him, and they're like, Scalabrini in his entire career scored less points than James Harden did in the first 60 games of this year.
Yeah, we pickleball is such a social sport, and we have a group of guys that have gotten pretty good at our club, and it's not doesn't have like the national notoriety unless you're kind of cued into it.
Mm-hmm.
So your average guy looks at a guy like me who's, I'm like a 4 or 5 pickleball player, and they're like, holy, how can it be much better than you? And I'm like, well, you don't, it's like anything. You just have no idea how good the guys who do it for a living are. And it's such a young sport, especially to do professionally. They're just getting better and better and better. And luckily, I've been able to be on a court with some of those guys, and it's just they make me look silly. Just like if I was to try to play pickup basketball with the 200th best player in the NBA, I wouldn't score a point. It's kind of the same thing. Like we armchair quarterback and we watch, and everybody you watch is good, and you don't ever have like a point of reference to realize how good they all are.
When I was off of playing full time, I was watching one of the tour events, and it might have been an open. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they've got the audio and the mic down there, and they're going through the player caddy discussion, and the guy, whoever it was in wedge distance, and the caddy gives them the yardage. It's like 89 to the bunker edge, and 93 to the edge of the green, and then 97 to the pin. And my dad looks at me and says, are guys really that good? He goes, were you that good? I said, well, on the days that you're on, yeah, you can dial it in within a yard.
No doubt.
But the days that you're off, knowing your yardages will at least allow you to avoid hitting into the bunker. So you might hit it 15 to 20 feet past instead of 3 feet, but coming in impact if you need to add just a little bit more or take just a little bit off. So that's where that difference is. And
right. I had to.
Right. My dad's just, he's a 20 handicap, and it was hard for him to even comprehend that, but he goes, yeah, I get it. I just don't understand it.
Yeah. I had that conversation with somebody when they were talking about the using the rangefinders for the PGA. And somebody was like, are a bunch of guys going to be using it? I was like, absolutely not. They're good for like shooting a bunker or something, or different tees in practice rounds. But if you ever look at a tour yardage book, nobody ever just shoots a pin and that's how far they hit it. You're never, very, very rarely are you just shooting one number and that's what you're going for. You've got cover numbers and slopes and, your max carries and your front edges and things like that. Like that, those guys are so good that, very rarely are you ever looking at, okay, I've got 164 yards. I'm going to hit this 164 yard shot. That's not how golf at that level works.
Yeah. It's more about, at least for me, it was about placement and where you want to either come into the pin from. And I'm not talking angles because I know that like guys like Decade and Scott Fawcett are really kind of proving that wrong. I'm just talking about where, as you said, slopes. And at that level, it seems like every pin is tucked. And carries, and okay, am I on today? If I'm not on today, where's my miss? And then how do I work it into that pin or give me the best chance of having a decent look at birdie? To as you said, you're okay. Here's the pin. Where's the slope number? What's the front edge number? Right. So it's like a science that at that level it's happening instantaneously. It's instinctual.
Right. Yeah. If the pin's here, I'm going to hit it here. If it's 30 on, I'm only going to hit it 26 on, and aim 15 feet right of it, and give myself a 30 footer or 20 footer. And it's all in the prep work that people don't see.
A big thing that's a lot of questions that I'm getting from amateurs now as we either play or hang out or whatever you're talking to somebody, and is the one thing that they're asking is, and I always ask this, or I've started asking this of guys who played at a very high level and other coaches, and when somebody's that good, take like a Jordan Spieth or a Rory, how do they have such a tumble from being the number one player in the world to struggling to make cuts?
I mean, I guess the best way to describe it is I would have amateurs that are like, oh, well, I'm struggling with this, or I don't know where it's going, or so I'm feeling shaky over this shot. You guys you don't even know what that feels like. And I'm like, no, we do.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do, I know that the best players in the world do as well, because you see that happen. And nobody other than maybe Tiger, although he showed, some stuff with his chipping and driving that, showed some chinks in the armor, but nobody is immune from golf. And, when you play golf with that level of confidence and you're so used to your mind working and your body performing, and all of a sudden what you see in your head doesn't match up with what your body's doing, it'll mess you up.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you get guys at that high level where all of a sudden their brain is working one way and the shots that are coming out are not doing that, it can really mess you up. It was like, with Spieth for a couple of years. I mean, the guy never missed a putt inside of 20 feet.
Yeah, no kidding.
And eventually that's what your brain tells you to do. Okay, I'm in this situation. It's going to go in. Or doesn't matter how poorly I'm hitting it, my putting is going to save me. Well, all of a sudden you get in a little rut where your putting stops saving you. Then the pressure deflects to the ball striking, and then it becomes this vicious cycle. And your entire game, before you realize it, is in the trash. Kind of the same thing I think Rory openly admitted, that he saw what Bryson DeChambeau was doing, and he was going to chase, trying to hit it an extra 10 or 15 yards. And before you know it, he's hitting these like giant banana pull hooks. And he goes from one of the best drivers of the golf ball in the world to all of a sudden, I can't drive it on the planet. And now what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it's crazy that, even down to the little things where you get on the first tee and you're like, wow, my hands just don't feel right on the club some days. Nobody really is immune to it. And when you're going at that high a speed, the slightest bump can throw you off something fierce. I mean, I've seen some of the best players in the world just get the putting yips or the chipping yips, or all of a sudden they can't drive it on the golf course. And, you're like, where does that even come from?
Yeah, the two things I explained to a lot of people who asked me what it was like playing golf at a high level, as you just said, at the speeds that you're going, and I think I've said this on the show before, it's like, if you're rolling through your neighborhood on idle and you run over a 1-inch stick that fell during a storm, your tire's just going to break it, and you hardly even feel it. But you're in an Indy car going 185 miles an hour and you hit the same stick, you're dead.
Yep.
Right? It throws you off that much. And the margins for error, once you get to professional golf, whether it's a mini tour, Korn Ferry, Mackenzie, Latin America, PGA, are so small, and they get smaller and smaller the higher you go. And that really, I think, gets into somebody's head, or can, if there's if there's a little crack and some water can get in there and then it starts doing damage, then you got some trouble.
Yeah, the first time I really realized it, I kind of had this giant awakening. I qualified for the U.S. Open at Pebble right out of college, and got paired with a guy in a practice round via knowledge of one of my old coaches that was trying to help him out, a former number one player in the world who had kind of fallen off. And we ended up just playing a practice round together, and it was super cool. And we got up on 18, and you could tell he was trying to paint it down the coastline and just bleed it back into the fairway like he did back in the heyday.
Mm-hmm.
And he just kept hitting dump hook after dump hook out in the ocean. And I'm like, God, and it just kind of dawned on me, like, it's got to be tough, when you're that good, number one player in the world, making all this money, driving it down the middle of every fairway. And then for whatever reason, you have this break where you kind of lose your game, and then you try to come back, and your brain sees the shots that you think you should be hitting, and you can hit, but you can't hit those shots anymore.
Yeah,
And it's
I
like
feel
I
that with
can
my body now.
well, and now that I'm not, and now that I'm not like practicing every day or ever really, and playing, sporadically, I'm finding the same thing. Like, okay, I'm just going to hit a little feather cut, whatever 6 iron into this pin, and I hit a yank hook, and I'm like, I'm not that good right now. Like, what are you trying to do? Just hit it in the middle of the green. It's hard to turn that off.
I can remember distinctly. So if when I was playing, if I took a week off, it would, and then went to go start. If you got 2 weeks off and you take 1 week to just decompress,
Hmm.
and then you start playing with the guys and just to get your timing and everything back, it would take a couple holes before
Hmm.
you would dial it in. And then so when I got done playing, if I didn't play for a couple weeks, it got to the point where it would take 9 holes to get it back dialed in, and then
Yep.
it kept getting longer and longer until one day I came home and I told my girlfriend, I said, I've lost the cape.
Yep.
Superman's lost his cape, right?
Yep.
Because I was seeing shots and I'd step up to hit it and it would go complete opposite
Right.
or nowhere near what I expected.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah,
Yep.
okay, I'm back in the real world now.
That's right. Now I remember why everybody says this game is so hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you had a very successful career. Um, Even though looking back, once you reach a certain level, you look back and you want to continue to go forward. But if you, as we look back now, and I think you've been not playing for a few years, as you look back, you can obviously say, yeah, the level you got to is very high, higher than probably 99.5% of the people that play golf in the world.
Yeah.
You played at a higher level than that. So let's just jump back to the beginning a little bit and how you got started and who got you into it and helped you along and things like that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I had a club in my hand as a toddler. My dad was a big golfer, played for a couple of years at LSU before he transferred back to go to school closer to home, and just was a golf nut. Loved everything about it.
Mm-hmm.
I played every sport growing up: basketball, soccer, baseball, the whole shebang, and it kind of got to the point where I was getting better at golf and enjoying it, and it was something that I did with my dad, and it got to the point where baseball and golf were in the same season in high school. Kind of had to make a decision and decided to go with golf, and poured pretty much everything into it. And I had some kind of crappy fundamentals. I had a really strong grip, had a big dumpy hook, but kind of just figured out how to get it around, and had moderate enough success and good enough grades to where I got a last second opportunity where a small amount of scholarship popped up at South Carolina, and coach at the time, Puggy, gave me a shot, just kind of as a last minute addition. Um, and I would say that the biggest thing in my golf career that happened was Puggy ended up kind of semi-retiring and brought in a guy named Bill McDonald at South Carolina. And Bill was a really good player. He actually played for Puggy at Georgia Tech and played professionally for a couple of years, and ended up staying in the golf business as a teacher, and kind of looked at me and was like, why is this kid on this team? You watch it. I remember I'll never forget at Spring Valley in Columbia, him watching me play about 9 holes in a qualifier at the beginning of my sophomore year, and was like, can I watch you hit a couple of balls? And he was like, you cannot play Division I golf hitting that big of a hook. Do you have like a swing coach? And I was like, not really. I just kind of been trying to figure it out on my own. He was like, let me help you. And just kind of got a little bit better each year.
Mm-hmm. And to not, I want to get into that, but one thing I want to ask you about, because you're obviously friends with Tim O'Neill, and Timmy was on last
Yep.
week, and
Mm-hmm.
I kind of tagged you guys, the Bacon Park boys,
Yep.
because he grew up. Did you play most of your golf and learn playing over at Bacon Park with that crew of him and Tommy Schaff and some other
I
guys?
did. Yeah, and obviously Tim and Tommy were older, and we all looked at them like they were, these mega stars, and that was about the time where Tim was kind of, you know, popping up on in the golf world for one reason or another. Unfortunately, a couple of years because of some crazy stuff that happened to him at Q school, but yeah, I mean, Timmy, I just remember being so freaking good, which he still is. He looks the exact same as he did
He
when
hasn't
I was a
changed, has he?
teenager. It's unbelievable. I actually saw him yesterday, and I was playing 9 holes with a guy in this little match, and he was like, "Oh, that's Tim O'Neill." I was like, "Yeah, can you believe he's 48?" He was like, "Wait, what? That guy's not 48 years old." I was like, "I know he's in better shape than I am. That's for sure." But yeah, man, there was a whole gaggle of us teenagers that were all trying to play high school golf, and our parents would drop us off at the Muni, and we would just hang out there all day. I worked out there picking the range and stuff like that for the free golf, and we'd valet cars for the city amateur that was out there every year, and just chip for used golf balls and stuff. And I was out there all day, every day, and I just absolutely loved it.
They got some reinvigorated, didn't it, with OC Welch getting involved and that whole
Yeah,
operation?
yeah. I mean, it was really cool because it was Donald Ross actually originally designed 4 golf courses for Bacon Park back in like the 20s or 30s,
Mm-hmm.
and 2 of them were built. One of them ended up being a neighborhood over there across the street, and the other one remained. And in the 70s, when the city took it over, they kind of merged it and built. It kind of went around this low area, kind of a floodplain, and they built 9 holes in the floodplain, and then wove all the holes together. So it was 3 nines, and you'd get kind of a couple of holes of the original course, then a couple of holes of the regular one that were wet. This canal ran through them, and when OC took it over, he restored it back to the original 18, and then basically made almost like a little executive course in the middle. So it's pretty cool that it's back to more of the original layout that Donald Ross intended. There's probably not a whole lot of people that can say their city has a municipal city golf course that's an original Donald Ross.
No, and what is amazing is he's what are there 4 courses in Savannah that are Ross courses? You got the golf club, Bacon Park, the old Savannah, the inn, the Sheridan
Yeah.
Inn course. I can never remember the new name of it. Was it?
Yeah, it was the Wilmington Island Club. Now it's Savannah Country Club.
Yes, and then the
But
military course is a Ross course, isn't it?
I think the original 9 might have been. I know it was only 9 when it was designed. But then right down the road you've got Brunswick Country Club as well. So yeah, we've actually been doing some digging at the Savannah Golf Club where I'm a member, because Gil Hance is doing a renovation of it,
Mm-hmm.
and so we've been trying to kind of dig to see how involved Donald Ross was, in the building and designing of our club.
Geez, for anybody that's played the well, it used to be the first hole. Now it's a 10th hole, isn't it? That with that raised green and that not like
Mm-hmm.
90-degree dog leg. Like,
Yep.
yeah, he was. I'd say he was probably hands on that one.
Yeah. Oh, that was the most terrifying first hole in all of golf, and
Oh,
that was number one.
and that green with that hourglass shape. I mean,
Yep.
yeah.
Oof. Yeah. You could make a number there quick.
Is playing against guys like Tim and the guys who are older than you, and is it's kind of come to be known that as all of us are young and our belief system is pretty firmly established when we're kids without even knowing it, like a subconscious, and it kind of becomes the groundwork for us as young adults and adults, building character, overcoming challenges, things like that. Was it good, do you think, looking back, growing up against guys who were much older and well advanced, that you really had to improve, figure out ways to get better, to try to even compete with them?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there was some guys even a little more immediate, 5, 6 years older than I was that went on to play some college golf. And as a 13-year old or 12-year old looking at a 17, 18-year old uh, kid that's getting ready to go play Division I college golf, you're like, holy crap! Look at what they can do with the golf ball, and they can shoot in the 60s, and
Hmm.
it's just you're enamored by that kind of thing, and it definitely gives you the motivation and the drive to kind of get to where they already were.
Yeah, and do you think that going through that as a teenager or even a young teen helped you as you went from level to level? Because each time you go up in the system, the golfing hierarchy, so to speak,
Hmm.
you know, good junior to Division I to professional to Korn Ferry to PGA Tour. You think having that early um, experience uh, served a very good purpose, and that it gave you a foundation to on where it didn't make you scared, so to speak, and that you knew
Yeah,
you had done that in the past.
for sure. And golf is all about this. You have to be self motivated and kind of intrinsically motivated to play golf because it's not a team sport. And when you kind of ingrain that early on that, okay, I'm not as good as these guys, but I want to be able to play with these guys like that is something that until you get to the PGA Tour, that's the attitude you have to have.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's trying to make, watching high school kids and saying, all right, when I get to high school, I want to be on the high school team. Or when you get to the high school team, I want to play college golf. Okay, I'm out of college golf. I want to turn pro. And then you want to turn pro. I need to get on the Web Doctor Korn Ferry Tour, and so on and so forth. So setting, and the kids would find out early on whether you were one of those guys that just kind of enjoyed doing it and wanted to do everything else, or you looked at those guys and you're like, I want to be one of them. And that definitely dawned on me early that I was always looking up at who my next level of competition was, and that's where I wanted to be.
Did you outside of that area, and let's say the Savannah Junior Golf, did you play
Mm-hmm.
AJGA or like the what's the one over here, the Junior Heritage and some of the bigger events, or did you just kind of hang out
Yeah, I
Savannah?
mean, I would say I was a little bit of a late bloomer in junior golf and then again in college. So by the time I kind of developed my game, um, I was a little bit later on. Like I never played a ton of AJGAs. I played a couple of like local ones.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't very consistent just because I didn't have great fundamentals. But when I hit it well, I could go out and win a regional tournament. And then, the guys are committing so early these days where, if you're a sophomore and you're not out there playing in AJGAs and winning, you're probably going to miss the boat in a lot of, the bigger schools. So going the summer between my junior and senior year was where I finally kind of, I qualified for a U.S. junior and played well in a couple of bigger regional events. And, by that time, most of your big colleges had already kind of filled up. So I had some offers at some great schools, but some smaller programs, and was looking around and trying to kind of figure it out. And like I said, I was super lucky that there was kind of one roster spot and just a little bit of money left at South Carolina. And as soon as they threw that on the table, I was all in.
Well, that was one of the questions I had for you was how the hell did a Georgia kid escape the UGA powerhouse and end up in South Carolina? But that kind of
I
answers
mean,
it.
truthfully, I wasn't good enough. I mean, you had Brian Harmon that was my age that had committed, and Adam Mitchell, and all these guys that were these big AJGA names and top 20, Rolex players, and then there was me. Like I said, I I kind of got into some of that ranking stuff, but by the time I kind of got there, all of those guys had already committed. And luckily for me, I knew a handful of the guys just from some of the regional tournaments that were going to South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy from Savannah knew the coach and wanted his son to go visit and asked me to tag along. And I got up there and I knew all the guys that were coming in. And coach was like, we don't have a whole lot of money, but the guys who are coming in say they know you and they like you, and you've got good grades, so we can get you an academic scholarship. We can't give you a ton of golf, but I think they kind of looked at me as a low risk ad that they didn't have to spend a whole lot of money on. And luckily the Puggy was feeling generous and decided to offer me that spot.
And you said the assistant coach that or was putt guy that was Puggy's replacement kind of was your first swing instructor.
Puggy was the head coach,
right?
And through my freshman year, I played a couple of events my freshman year, but without much success. Was really struggling to kind of find my game, putting a lot of pressure on myself. And then we came in my sophomore year, and Puggy, who had been in college coaching forever, was like, "Hey guys, like I've decided I kind of want to explore some other options in golf, and I'm still going to be involved with the program, but this is Bill McDonald. He's going to be your new coach." And he was a fairly big teacher up in Atlanta, and he had played for Puggy at Georgia Tech. And like I said, he kind of was going back and forth trying to find a house, and came out and watched us play in one of these qualifiers, and basically looked at me and was like, "What the hell is this kid doing on this team?" And he asked me, he was like, can I help you? And I was like, please, I don't know what I'm doing. And it could not have worked out better. There's absolutely no way that I would be playing. I would have played professional golf. One, had Puggy not given me a chance to be on the team, and two, had Billy Mack not come in and kind of taken hold of me and made me listen to him.
What was some of the things that he worked with you on in the early stages?
A lot of fundamentals. I kind of had my pivot wasn't real good. I had a tendency to kind of turn it on top of the ball. I had a super strong left-hand grip, and he was like, "I don't mind you drawing it, but we gotta make it more kind of a natural draw as opposed to just everything being shut." And
I used to call it the Pete Weber. Like the bowler started over the right gutter and sling it back to the left one.
Absolutely. I had that shot in the bag. And I've got good hand-eye coordination, so I could kind of make it work. But when it was off, it was just horrific. And kind of gradually got my left-hand grip a little weaker, and got the club on plane, and worked on my pivot. And before you know it, I was actually seeing the ball cut. And to me, that was just like, this is crazy. I've never really been able, I could hit a block, but I could never really hit a cut. And I just kind of embraced it and have hit a cut my entire life since then. Just for me, the club face was more stable, and my shot shape was a little more under control, and I just kind of took it. And I was always a pretty good putter. Always had a pretty good short game. I had to, because any given day I'd hit it off the planet. And once I started to kind of rein that in, like I had at the end of my sophomore year, I really didn't play that much because I was working on my swing so much. I didn't even play in the SEC championship, and the guys didn't play well. And he opened up a spot in the lineup for regionals. And I qualified, and we went out, and back when there was only 3 regionals, and we had to fly out to Arizona and play. And we shot like 40 something under par and won. And then we finished 10th in NCAAs, and I think I finished 20th individually. And just out of nowhere, it's like my 3rd or 4th event of the year. And those were at the time. I don't think South Carolina had ever won a regional, and it may have been the second or third highest finish in the NCAA championship in team history. And all of a sudden, I was like, all right, I'll probably do this.
A little eye
And
opening.
yeah, and I played a little bit more consistent my junior year. And by my senior year, I played every event and was an All-American, and kind of gave me the hopes of saying, you know what, maybe I can kind of give this a run, trying to do it for a living.
So the decision to pursue professional golf didn't come until your senior year.
Yeah, I mean, I was, and I'm a fairly logical guy, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, if I can't beat most of these guys I'm playing against in college, how am I supposed to beat those guys that are playing on TV? So, I never won in college, but I had a bunch of solid finishes. Had a good NCAA tournament. Decided to kind of play amateur golf that summer and feel it out, because after I was an All-American and All SEC, I got some invites into some of the bigger amateur tournaments, and I almost won the Southern AM. And we had a tournament, kind of a local one that had kind of grown nationally here, called the Oglethorpe, that I ended up winning, and kind of just gave me that that little extra thing to push me over the edge to say, you know what, I think I'm going to give this thing a go.
So it was just a steady progression that
It
kept
was
building on your confidence.
correct. Yeah, just was like that in junior golf, and then it was like that in college golf, and then kind of get some rude awakenings going out there, because you have a 72.5 stroke average in college, and you're an All-American, and you have a 72.5 stroke average in professional golf, and you go broke real fast.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I was lucky. I really didn't have a whole lot of money to start with. I wanted to keep living in Columbia. I had to move home. I couldn't afford to keep living there, and I just had to kind of make it work. Luckily, my Savannah Golf Club pitched in and got me enough to play for a few months, and I just went and played wherever was cheap, and I had friends where I could stay, and it actually, it turned out to be a blessing, because you play in these tournaments with 30, 40 guys, and I luck up and win one or win two, and winning kind of breeds winning. So the next year I was like, okay, well, I've made enough where I can play a tour that's a little more substantial, and it was like, well, shoot, if I can win there, then I can win out here and make a little more money. And then before you know it, okay, I can afford to play like the Hooters Tour now, which back in the day was pretty solid.
Yeah, that was a big. That was one of the bigger
Yeah,
mini tours. It was I
it
think the
was.
biggest
Yeah,
mini tour in the
it
country
was
for a
the
long time.
biggest mini tour. Yeah, and I was lucky enough to win out there, um, and then got some web.com tour status after that. One up in Canada, and unfortunately that's where the winning was capped off. But no, played well in a bunch of tournaments, and got to play in a couple of majors, and man, it was a fun ride.
When what were the events that you started playing when you moved back home to Savannah?
So I played a lot on the, oh God, what was it called? It was in Myrtle Beach. My buddy Zach Bird, who's now actually he's the assistant coach at Ole Miss for the ladies, who just won the national championship. Um, oh, it's going to kill me what that little tour was called, but Zach and I
That
were
was in the
friends.
winter, wasn't it?
Well, there was a Hooters Tour winter series in
That's
Myrtle
right.
Beach. And there was another just local Myrtle Beach tour. And so Zach had, when when his roommate was out of town, I crashed in their bedroom, and then he had a pull out couch. So I would go and spend couple of weeks at a time, and they were all 2-day tournaments, maybe the occasional 3-day tournament, and I would just go. I would sign up. They were all a couple of $100 a piece, and I'd go play as many tournaments as I could in 2-3 week span. And hopefully leave with some money in my pocket. Um, but yeah, I spent a lot of time up in Myrtle Beach, and then uh, made enough there to play a tour that was started up around Georgia called the Peach State Pro Tour.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of an Atlanta-based tour, and they were kind of advertising some 7 and 10 grand winners checks. They did a little winter series down in Florida, and won a couple of those events, and then I think I won 8 times on that tour that year. Um, they had a tour championship that was like 20 grand, and so had some success there, and didn't get through Q school, and I was like, well, shoot, now I got enough money where I can go out and play, which at the time, the PGA Tour didn't own China or Latin America or Canada. So if you weren't on the nationwide tour, the next best thing was the Hooters Tour.
Mm-hmm.
I think it even still had its own little Q school to get out there.
And that was about '09 that you were got out of school. Is that right?
Yeah, I got out in '09.
Because I think I remember that's about the time I started hanging out in Savannah as I met a lot of those guys, playing in the member guests and all that. And I vaguely remember when you were going to head out and play, and a few of the members talking about, because I was done. Let's see, I left playing full time in '06. I was still doing some Mondays in '07, but by '09 I was done.
Yeah.
But remembered hearing that you were doing really well and going to go give it a shot. Because you're about DJ's age, right? Dustin Johnson?
Couple of years older than me.
Yeah, okay, I thought so. Because he had just graduated a few years before from Coastal. Because one of
right.
who is it? The one guy is a member there. His son played at Coastal with him. Japanese guy. I don't even know if he's a member there anymore. Owned like 3 restaurants in Savannah.
Yeah, well, that was Toshi.
Toshi,
Toshi
yes.
Harada. Yeah, his son actually played at Georgia Southern.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because he played they played against us in the member guest one year, and that was like right when I got off playing, and they had no one who knew who I was outside a couple buddies, and they're like, why the hell are you playing here? I said, it's a long story, but took my shot at fame and fortune. Going from, let me back up a little bit. Going from junior golf to college golf, and you elaborated on the work that you put in with the coach and the changes you made. But what about did the adaptation of now being on your own, did that fuel that fire of being uncomfortable and throwing your game off? Just adjusting to a new way of life.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and at the time, I looked at all these guys that had all this money behind them, and by no means was I destitute or anything, but I was like, it made me hungrier when you're like, hey, if I don't play well, I got to figure out something else to do. There was no other options. I was not going to go back and ask anybody, for anything else. And it made me appreciate everything, and definitely learn how to travel and budget efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, it made you have to go out there and figure it out, because I mean, it's just like anything else. You see a bunch of guys that have a bunch of money, and they kind of go out and they goof off, and they don't take it super seriously, and they don't put in the work, and it's whatever. They do it for a couple of years and have fun and move on and do something else, and nothing wrong with that. But that was just not really what how I kind of viewed it. And those first couple of years of having to go out, and I mean, and playing mini tour golf, you never knew what you were going to see when you showed up to an event. I mean, luckily, I'm sure Tim's got all the horror stories about guys running off with all the purse money. I never had that happen to me, but
I
yeah, you
remember that,
show
that
up.
that happened in like 2000, probably right before you and I think 2008 or 9. There was a group that was, you had to put up,
Hmm.
I think, 15,000.
Yep,
And then, yeah, those guys ran off with a lot of money.
yep, yep. I remember
That
hearing
that
about
that was the
that.
big horror story.
But I mean, I just remember the first sizable tournament for me that I won. I won about 4 grand or something like that. Was in Myrtle Beach. I think it was one of those Hooters Tour Summer Series or something in Myrtle Beach. Oh, Grand Slam Tour. That was it. God, I knew it would come to me. Anyway, I just remember like they put the leaders out the final round first for some reason, and we made the turn. We played pretty quick, and all of the public play they were sending off the back that morning was backed up.
Jesus.
So we had to sit there for like an hour trying to make the turn for all of the public play to get off from their tee times that the club had had put out. And it was stuff like that where I just remember doing that for a couple of years, my first 2 years out of college, and then you go to play a Hooters tour event, you're like, holy crap, there's like a pro-am here, and
Hmm.
there's nobody else on the golf course except for this tour for this week. Like, how cool is this?
Yeah, it's a different, as you move up, much different. I think I told Tim when we were talking that when I met him, oh God, when was it? It was like '06, '05, playing in Raleigh. And I told the story, I showed up for my practice around the stars, like, well, we don't want to send you as a single. You can play with the guy that's coming across the parking lot. And here's Tim coming across with this big, giant JL belt buckle that I don't
Mm-hmm.
even know how he moved with that thing on. Um, but then I didn't have status out there. I think I Mondayed into that one. But
Mm-hmm.
um, the next, I came home and to go back to work. And then 2 weeks later, I went back to playing full time. But the first event I played on the Tar Heel Tour was at Charlotte National, and it was out in the middle of nowhere. And my girlfriend went with me to both, and we pull into Charlotte National doing the drive in, and she's just looking around, and I'm watching her reaction.
Yeah.
And I said, "Welcome to the minor leagues.
Mm-hmm.
Not big time anymore."
Yep.
Going from working on your swing and getting your game, whether you knew it or not, to a level. What did that teach you anything that you use later on, and a setback that ended up being something that you utilized as you advanced through smaller tours to bigger tours?
Um, I mean, I don't know. I was lucky that I had a lot of steady kind of progression. I wouldn't say I really had a ton of setbacks. I kind of kept getting a little bit better each year, and that it just kind of ingrained like, okay, last year I never thought I would be here. And
Mm-hmm.
the year before that, I never thought I would be here. And, my junior year of college or high school, I never thought I'd be playing golf in the SEC and so on and so forth. So it was like I kept watching people that were getting better than me faster at every level. Um, and just watching me catch back up to them was really really cool. Like you get to college and you're like, oh, I remember that guy won everything at junior golf, and then at the end of the year, well, shoot, I'm ranked higher than he is. Or you get to mini tour golf and you're like, oh my gosh, that guy played on a Walker Cup team, but I beat him this week. And I will say that probably the biggest thing, I guess you could kind of call it a setback, that really was kind of a game changer for me was I had I had lost in a playoff. I'd lost in a 4 for 3 playoff to get into Raleigh um, in 2010, basically my first year out. And I was just devastated because I thought getting into OneWeb.com tour event would have changed my life entirely.
Mm-hmm.
But I was so pissed, and I went home and I was like, okay, I can do stuff like this. And like 3 weeks later, I qualified for the U.S. Open. And I remember I had zero actual expectations of getting into the U.S. Open, and I won in a playoff to get in. I'm sitting there across from Lane, who was the director of the GSGA, and he's going through all of this stuff for the U.S. Open, and I was like, I got to be perfectly honest, I don't even know when it is. He was like, what? I was like, I never even looked to see when the friggin' tournament is. I just,
I got to make
got
sure I
through,
can
got
get
through
fitted
low.
in.
Yeah. I was like, he's like, it's next week. It's like, holy crap. I've never played in anything other than, a 2-day mini tour event. And now I got to fly across the country and go play in the U.S. Open. And, I went out there and, played practice rounds with all these guys that I'd watched my entire life, and then I birdied the first hole of the U.S. Open, and then shot a zillion. I shot 81, 80 or something like that, and finished near the bottom. But I just remember leaving there thinking, okay, I played practice rounds with some of the best players in the world, and they hit a lot of really crappy shots.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not what I thought it was, where you just have this image in your head where all these guys that play on the tour, they don't ever miss 3-footers and they don't ever miss fairways and everything is solid. And, all this kind of grand illusion in my head that these guys were like these unflappable machines. And I was like, they're not. They're not that. And I kind of left that week after shooting a zillion, actually believing in myself more. And I want to say I won 2 out of my next 3 events in Myrtle Beach after I got back from the U.S. Open, because I was just like, it's like, okay, I think I can do this.
Yeah, it's kind of like seeing in the Wizard of Oz that it's not the all-powerful Oz. It's a guy behind a curtain, right?
Right, exactly.
And I think the PGA Tour and the network carriers and whoever carries the golf tournaments has done an amazing job. Maybe it's a ancillary benefit that they didn't plan on, but they're obviously showing that the leaders or guys up on the leaderboard or the girls up on their leaderboard every week, and it gives the illusion that that tour players never miss a fairway. They never miss anything outside of 6 feet. But if you go to a tour event, if you're an average
a lot of really
golfer,
crappy shots.
And I've told people, I said, go to a tour event and follow the guys or the girls who are struggling to make the cut. I said, you want to see some crooked shots? They're not perfect, not by any means. Now, as we alluded to earlier, we're talking about distances and yardages, and yes, you can hit it to a yard on 165 or 80, whatever distance shot. But when you do hit it crooked, nobody's perfect. I mean, we're all human. Most people, as they try to improve, they have this, I think, godlike vision of what a tour professional is.
Yep, absolutely. I used to always tell guys in my club, I was like, listen, I could grab a rank and file PGA Tour player, bring him out here, you'd play with him 3 days, and one of those days you'd be like, I cannot believe this guy plays on the PGA Tour. Because they're human. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of guys that I played with in college or in mini tour golf or on the web.com tour where and you catch everybody on a bad day. You don't really have a giant scope of what their game is, and you watch them shoot a million and whatever, and then a couple of years later they're winning a PGA Tour event. You're like, how is that even possible?
Well, yeah, and I think it's the guys who. All right, I'll give you an example. I just finished reading this book called, and evidently it's one of the best sellers on Amazon, and it's going a little crazy, but it's called Peak, P-E-A-K, and what the hell was in it? Secrets of the New Science of Expertise. So it was always assumed that that there were what do they call them when they're great from a young age? Not protege. I'm like you with the name of the tool. I'll think of it in a minute.
Yeah. Phenom.
Phenoms. So and they open up the book with Mozart, because they said at 6 years old he had perfect pitch, and they're like, that's unheard of. But what they found out later was Mozart's dad was a music teacher, and he was teaching Mozart's older sister, who was about, I think they said 4 years older, So from the
Hmm.
time that he was an infant in a crib or wherever he was, and listening to this thing the entire time, he was developing over that whole time.
Right.
And that by the time he's 6, of course, if that's all he's done his whole life, he's going to be phenomenal at it. But as the book goes on, the point of it is, if someone has phenomenal talent at one age, but you take that talent versus somebody who maybe learns how to just plod along, and they both do it the same amount of time, but the plodder continues to get input from coaches or teachers or mentors or somebody that helps them along, they're
Hmm.
going to pass that talented person who's just maybe become accustomed to relying on their talent.
No doubt.
Right. And I saw that a lot out playing. I'm sure you did too, where you got these guys that can do things with the golf ball that just, you like, how is this person not in the top 5 in the world? And they're struggling to
Right.
make cuts on mini tours.
Yep.
And by the time you get to that level, it's very difficult to learn a fundamental, because their default is to go back to using their talent. Press the
Right.
accelerator.
Right. Yeah. I've seen some of the most talented guys hit a golf ball and play golf that you've never heard their names.
Mm-hmm. So the whole gist of the book was like, okay, I think they called it methodical learning, but
Hmm.
find somebody who can show you how to get to do what you want to do, and then do that just each and every day. Just get
Right.
better, slowly and surely. And as long as you stick to it and follow that principle, you'll
Right.
get to where you want to be. You're going to make mistakes. I mean, I think everybody goes through that. I know I did big time, where it,
Oh,
it,
yeah.
it helped me in my golf, but mine came from watching Biography Channel, where like Sam Walton went bankrupt 5 times, and
Right.
Steve Jobs. Well, Steve Jobs is a rare exception. He goes from nothing to worth 10 million in a year and 100 million the next year. So maybe that's
Right.
not the best example, but all these people who just had failure, 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 but learned along the entire process, and all, next thing you know, like you said, they're winning a golf tournament, they're making the next greatest widget company,
Yep.
anything, that you never hear of them until they bust through.
Right. No, golf is full of those guys that just gut it out and keep getting better, and you never heard of them, and all of a sudden, they're making zillions of dollars out there. It's awesome.
When you got in that Open, the 2010 Open, what was kind of the most eye opening thing for you?
Well, I would say on one side of the coin, me trying to figure out how to hit it out of the rough,
Mm-hmm.
and then Phil Mickelson coming out there with a bunch of balls and cutting through it like butter, and them all floating up there and stopping to a foot. I just stopped, and I was like, this is the most incredible thing that I've ever seen. And I see why he is what he is, because I can barely even get it out of this stuff. And then, yeah, on the flip side, I remember I played a practice round. I randomly got hooked up with some guys from Sea Island, and I played with Brant Snedeker, and he had his swing coach out there. The guy denied one solid shot in 18 holes, and I was like, this is unbelievable. This guy is in a dark place right now, and he finished 10th that week. And I just remember thinking, like, I mean, there's no way that guy hit that many solid shots that week. He just gets it around. He putts it great. It's like these guys are not machines.
Mm-mm.
And so, I took away a handful of guys. I hit balls next to Lee Westwood one day, and the sound that his golf ball made was something that I had never heard before. I was like, that's the heaviest thud I've ever heard. So, it was cool to see, not only kind of want to be inside the ropes and next to these guys that you grew up watching, and to see what their ball flights look like, and hear the sound that it makes, and see all the good stuff. And then on the flip side, see, okay, they're also very, very human.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to kind of learn from both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, that had to be pretty, uh, almost like an epiphany, right? And that,
Yeah.
as we talked about earlier, where a professional golfer can go from just being on complete autopilot and playing at the highest level, and then just slowly drift downwards until they don't know which direction the ball's going to go. And
Yep.
then you have an example of what you just did, where you can see something, and instead of standing over a 6 footer, or thinking that you have to hit your iron shots inside of 10 feet or you're never going to make a birdie, that puts pressure on your iron game, and then it puts pressure on your driver
Mm-hmm.
game. Next thing you know, your game's in the tank. But you seem to have taken that the other spectrum, and that you went and said something clicked that said, well, okay, I don't have to press so hard. I
Right.
don't have to be
I,
perfect.
yeah. I got a putting tip that next year from my coach. Just trying to get a feel for something kind of wacky. He kind of had me setting up like Jack Nicklaus, where kind of crouched down, right elbow inside, and for whatever reason, I could feel the putter had released better than anything that I had ever felt before. And I made everything for a year straight on the mini tours. It was incredible, and I just remember playing in the tour championship on that tour, playing for a first place check that I'd never played before. And I was tied with this guy going into the last hole. I probably hit it about 15 feet on one side of the hole. He hit it about 12 feet on the other side of the hole. I just remember getting over this putt thinking, I don't even have to read it. I don't have to aim. There's no way that it won't go in. I could shoot it like a pool cue, and it went right in the heart. He missed. I won the tournament, and that is just it's the biggest freaking conundrum of golf is how you can go from that one week to the next week, the hole looking like a thimble.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
I
amazing, and
just
nobody can put their finger on it.
no, but it was just like it was the most surreal feeling for me at that stage in my career, having that kind of pressure and just having zero doubt that there was any possible way that the putt could miss. And then, thinking back, obviously, golf is a sport where you're going to fail tremendously more than you're going to succeed. All the other times where you're over a 3 footer, like, God, I mean, it doesn't even look like the hole's big enough to fit this golf ball in it.
So you won your two of your next three events after the Open with that kind
Hmm.
of understanding that you don't have to be perfect anymore, and you hear a lot
Right.
of people say that uh,
Yep.
at that level, but then in 2011, I think you won some crazy amount of tournaments that
Yeah.
year.
Yep.
Kind of
Yep.
walk us through that year.
Yeah. I was lucky at the beginning of that year. I'd kind of gotten some confidence, and my college coach called me and he was like, "Hey, we're having Bob Rotella come back and talk to the team. If you're up around, if you're not doing anything, you're more than welcome to come sit in." Um, and there was a couple of things that he had said that to me just resonated. And one of the biggest things he said that I took away from it, I will never forget it. He said somebody was talking about how not to get frustrated and first tee jitters and all this kind of stuff. And he said, if I told you that you had won the tournament before you even teed off, would you let anything bother you? And of course, the answer is, well, no. I mean, if I already won the tournament, if I got a bad break or hit it in the water or whatever, who cares?
Mm-hmm.
It was like, that is the attitude that you have to have. Tee it up on the first tee as if you have already won the tournament, because nothing at that point logically should ever bother you. And that whole year, I was just in this zone of, what, it doesn't matter. Whatever I do, I've already won the tournament. And it gave me this level of freedom to go play and not let anything bother me. And it was awesome. And it's, again, it's one of those crazy things where, how do you go from feeling like that? And then, of course, then okay, now I'm on a different tour. I've got web.com tour status. Now there's more pressure and I've got to keep my card. I've got to make cuts and so on and so forth. And a lot of that stuff, starts kind of falling behind the wayside.
Mm-hmm.
You start kind of collecting demons as golf kind of forces you to do. And, you forget some of that just very basic stuff that, is kind of what got you there. Um, but yeah, it was crazy. The combination of kind of understanding that everything didn't have to be perfect and getting some confidence in my putter, and then just a handful of those things that, ironically, one of his most famous books is not Golf is Not a Game of Perfect. Um, but just dumbing everything down to just say, don't, stuff's going to happen. You can't let it bother you.
I think part of it is being comfortable in the environment that you're in. And
Yeah.
if your first year was, would you say 2009 or 10?
Yeah, I pretty much
Right.
started playing full time in 10.
So now you've got a full year behind you. You're into 2000. You played in the U.S. Open. Now you're into 2011. So you're not as or you're more at ease with the different variables that come at you. You know what to focus on. You know what to let it roll off your back, and that seems to help. I remember the first year I played was 01 and 02, and Boo Weekley was on the mini tours, and he won something like 9 times in 6 months or something stupid. I think he shot 41 under for 2 3-round tournaments back to back.
Jeez.
And he was just on fire. And then he got his tour card that year at Q School, and then I think he made only a handful of cuts. I mean, he was so out of his element, and I think he admitted it. And then he went to then Nationwide, and he plays a couple years, and then obviously after I think 3 years, he gets his tour card again, and then the rest is history because he had become comfortable in that environment. He knew what to expect. He knew not to change who he was. To me, it sounds like that's kind of what you're describing a little bit, in that
Yeah.
you were able to calm yourself down because you had the experience of doing it for a year behind you already.
Yeah. And I mean, I can tell you that exact same thing happened to me. I got, in 13, I got conditional status on the web.com tour. Um, and I just remember for some reason thinking I had to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, well, this is a bigger tournament. I got to do more stuff and do this and do that. So there's equipment trucks and, you get tee up money and all this I remember I was playing some stupid hybrid to make an extra like $200 a week that I hated. And, you get pulled into all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I missed all these cuts and, I got shuffled out, and I got in one more tournament late in the year, and by that point, I was back playing mini tour golf and kind of back in my element, playing well. And I got in last minute, showed up, and was like, yeah, screw it. And I finished like 25th or something, and I was like, why didn't I just do this earlier in the year? And luckily, I was able to kind of get some status back out there the next few years. But yeah, I missed like my first 6 cuts, and it was just. I was uncomfortable, and I thought I had to do more and do this and do that because I was on this tour. And, there's a lot of factors. That's why I always, it's so easy to look at scores and say, well, how does that person shoot that? And there's so much more to golf than just hitting a golf ball.
Mm-hmm. Watching the PGA a couple weeks ago, Mickelson seems so relaxed or calm in the situation he was in.
Mm-hmm.
It was not, I mean, obviously he made history, but for the history he was going to and what he was trying to do, I mean, no one had ever done in history. And for him to have at least on the outside looked that calm, but I mean, he had like an inner peace to him.
No doubt.
For most of that final round, at least what I saw, which was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, you watch him, you watch when Tiger wins, they walk slower than everybody else. They chew gum. It's like you see that they're in their element.
Mm-hmm.
They don't always get to that point, but when they are to that point, they're comfortable there.
I think when golfers or anybody, whatever profession they're in, when they think that they have to do extra,
right,
is when they get in that, they blow an engine, they get into the red. They're throttling it down so hard.
Right.
And I guess maybe it takes failure. I mean, how do you get instincts? You got to fail. And how do you fail? Well, you got to go through it.
Right.
Nobody's born nobody comes out of the womb a genius, as we alluded to with Mozart and all that stuff earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I talked to Tim O'Neill about. We talked a little about sponsorships, and he got into what some of the bigger ones, like Korn, when you're on Korn Ferry, and how much you get from, let's say, a club company or a manufacturer, and then how it goes up when you go to the tour. But
Hmm.
I wanted to ask you about like when you're playing mini tours and you get some money from either a group or whoever it is. Are you able to speak about how maybe you had your plan structured? For example, what might have been the distribution of any money that you won or earned?
Yeah.
You know, when is that obligation met? When are you release and all those different things that some people might not know about?
Well, so and I'm very different than most. So when I was kind of struggling my first half of the year in 2010, I was just playing with kind of what I had in my savings, trying to live for free.
Mm-hmm.
Any money I had, I was putting back into it. And then luckily for me, I didn't even have a place to play. The Savannah Golf Club at the time wasn't doing super great. And, they were like, hey, you should probably join. And I was like, well, I don't really have the money to join. So I was kind of hopping around. And then luckily for me, I qualified for that US Open. When I got home, there was a bunch of members there that were like, "Hey, we need to kind of rally around him. He's one of our own." And, they gave me a playing membership, and then the club organized. Basically, they put out food and said, "Hey, if you want to come, donate $100, $200, $300, $400 to Mark." And they basically did a fundraiser, and I raised probably about $17,000.
Wow.
Everybody, a bunch of people just pitching in a couple of $100 a person, and luckily, no strings attached. They were just like, "Hey, go give it a shot." Um, and fortunately enough for me, um, that was right after the U.S. Open. I went out, won two or three mini tour events that year, so I didn't have to really dip into that. The next year turned around and in 2011 and won 15 times or something like that. So for me, I was fortunate enough to be young and had a free play, didn't have any bills, and everything that I made, I was able to put away outside of just my expenses. Um, and I never had to kind of go back to the well.
Nice.
Um,
It's
so,
amazing. I
so
mean,
yeah,
that's a perfect illustration of the Savannah Golf Club and the people of Savannah, at least to me,
they're the best.
right?
They're
I
the
mean, it's
best.
amazing play. I love going over there. I love just hanging out, and even if I'm just a guest slash fly on the wall, that's one of my favorite places to play golf and just
Hmm.
relax and enjoy the time spent. I love that
It,
place.
it really is. It's an incredible club.
Let me we're moving on really almost year to year through your career, and one thing I want to ask you about is in being on the big break. Um,
Yep.
so, and
Huh.
Tommy Schaff was on there too after you. What is it with guys, Savannah guys, and going on that show?
Yeah, I mean Justin Martinson, who was living in Savannah at the time, was on Tommy's show as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, for me, it was cool. The guy so he ended up being my agent, but he was a guy that I met in Columbia. Started kind of a small golf division of what's called Empire Sports, which is now he's kind of grown. Just basically was like, hey, you're a Gamecock, I'm a Gamecock. You don't need an agent, but I'm happy to help you out any way I can. And we got to be close. And when I was after I had some success in the mini tours and played in the U.S. Open, was playing on the Hooters tour, and doing my thing, he called me and was like, "Hey, do you have any interest in being on the big break?" I kind of know some of the producers. I introduced him to Tommy Gainey. When Tommy ended up Two Gloves ended up being a
Mm-hmm.
big star of that show, and I'm going to put your name in there. And I was like, man, I don't, it's kind of hokey. I don't really want to do it. And I went and interviewed and didn't get a call back. And the next year he called me again and he was like, hey, I'm going to mention him to him. You should go do a tryout. And they actually had They were at a Hooters Tour event in Ocala, Florida, and I was like, screw it, I'll do it one more time. And I went in there and did the whole deal and told them my spiel, and got a call back a few weeks ago that said I was like some kind of semifinalist, and I was out there playing really well, and was going through a bunch of stuff kind of personally. My dad was real sick and trying to play, and I got a call and said, "Hey, you're on the show," and it was crazy because they don't tell you anything. They don't tell you who else is on the show. They don't even tell you where you're going. They just say, "Where do you want to fly out of?" And you get an airplane ticket that shows up that told me I was going to Roanoke, Virginia. And I'm like, what the hell's in Roanoke, Virginia? You arrive in there and, they put you on a bus and you roll up to the Greenbrier, and there you go. It was a pretty crazy experience, but it was another one of those things where I was in this weird zone where nothing, I was so nervous. But once I kind of got in, nothing was bothering me. And I never thought for 1 second I wasn't going to win that show.
The public only sees the edited show clips, but what
Yeah.
right? What was it like? Not behind the scenes, but just doing the show itself. Was there any kind of funny, crazy moments that happened?
It is all crazy. You are up at 5. You got to get mic'd up. You got to get staged. For the breakfast shoot. And then they give you a little bit of a warm up, and then before every event, you have to sign a waiver with an attorney saying that you understand the rules. And then they shuttle you out. Then they got to set up the cameras. They don't tell you what you got to do.
What kind of rules are? What do they mean? You got to follow, of course.
If it's like a game of points, or you're hitting it inside of a circle, or it's a team thing,
and you got to sign a waiver to do that.
That you understand what the challenge is, because they don't want to be in a situation where you hit a shot on, and it's filmed once, and you go back and say, "Oh, that's not what they told me this game was." So every challenge you have to say, "I understand," and I can't go back and argue it. So yeah, half the time, by the time you go up and hit one shot over a flop wall, or you hit one shot from here, you hadn't hit a golf ball in an hour and a half. You've been sitting there.
So you're going in cold.
Going in cold. So there's every shot that you hit on that show feels like the first shot of the most pressure packed golf tournament you've ever played.
You get no warm up.
With no warm up. Because every shot that you hit is going to be watched by hundreds of thousands of people.
Mm-hmm.
So, truthfully, the least nerves I had on the entire show were probably the last episode, because you actually kind of got to play real golf.
Yeah, I remember when that show took off. Kip Henley, when he and Don Donatello, and I had known Kip's brother worked down here at Harbortown, Brent, and Brent's been on the show, and if Kip hears it, I'm pestering the shit out of him to come on.
Right.
He said, "Shoot, I can't talk for more than, because your show's too long. I can't talk for more than 15 minutes before people want to shut me off."
That's hysterical.
But that was kind of the first one I saw, and I think that's when it kind of blew up. But that's pretty cool that you were on there. What did you take away from it that either you didn't have prior or you were unaware of before, and how it might have helped your game?
Yeah, it was another kind of layer in that confidence, where I think I won on the Hooters Tour shortly after that, if I remember correctly. It was one of those things where, okay, this is another thing that I've kind of proved that I can do. If I can do that, in front of TV cameras, I can go win out here on the Hooters Tour. I think I finished third on the money list that year.
It's different playing in front of cameras, isn't it?
Ooh, yeah. But truthfully, you kind of like the crowds and the cameras and stuff, man. I always embrace that. Like, I thought that was so cool that I get this audience that wants to watch me, and now I get to show off.
Mm-hmm.
And the good thing for me is nobody knew if I hit a crappy shot, nobody knew who I was. They were going to forget it in 5 seconds. So, it was always kind of a cool opportunity to get to show off. Like, I mean, making a putt or doing something in front of a crowd. Not that I really played in front of a whole lot of big crowds other than those couple of U.S. Opens. But man, doing something and hearing people go nuts because of something you did is the coolest feeling in the world.
I remember the first time I had cameras following me, and this was many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was the Florida Open, and way back when that was a pretty big tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like Gary Nicholas was still playing mini stuff. Tim Petrovic.
Right.
There's probably a whole bunch of guys who I didn't even know. I was just a young kid, and I think it was South Florida, and I think the first day I shot 69, so I was like second or third because it was so windy. It was 30 miles an hour all day.
Right.
And the next day I made the turn at about 4 under, and all of a sudden there's a dozen or more cameras following me, and I'm like, oh, I must be at or near the lead, and I think I went double bogey, and
Yeah.
now I'm worried I'm going to make the cut or not. So that was for me. That was an eye-opening thing. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, dickhead, pay attention to what you're doing and not what's going on around you.
Yep. Easy to get sucked in.
Mm-hmm. And when that's your first event that's of any size compared to playing at home, it's a little overwhelming.
Right.
One thing I want to ask you about that a lot of people don't know about, but they've heard of it, but they don't know quite how intense it is, and that's Q school.
Ugh.
Right, exactly.
Well, and the amazing thing about that is all the stories and everything, Tim's stories, they all come from Q School finals.
Mm-hmm.
But there is nothing on planet Earth worse than the back nine at second stage.
Right, because if you don't get
Because
through, you don't get status.
you don't get
Right.
status anywhere. Now, granted, I only played Q School finals once where you could get a PGA Tour card, so my frame of reference is not as good as somebody's like Tim's, where you could go straight. I played 1 year where I could go straight to the tour. I was kind of, I was just trying to get Korn Ferry or Web.com tour status at the time, but especially after they made the changes to where you could only get to the Web.com tour, at least getting some status gives you a lot of perks. You still get a Web.com tour card. You can use PGA Tour travel. You can, all your Mondays are lower. You're getting whatever clubs you want.
You're actually
You
getting
have an
paid to play it.
yeah, and you get, you're one Monday and one check away from shuffling in and having a cool job for the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
You miss that second stage of Q School by one, you've got nothing.
Back at
Not
step
a
one, step
zilch.
zero.
Step zero. So that to me, and I kind of flew too close to the sun. I got through second stage of Q School my first handful of times, and finally went to the well too many times. I guess in 2016 or something, I was in good shape and kind of crapped the bed, and I was like, "Wow, I haven't experienced this before. This sucks."
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, those last few holes at second stage, if you're somewhere near, and it's like, at least if I get to Q School finals and play like crap, I got something to look forward to next year. If I don't get through second stage, I have absolutely nothing. And then obviously you get to Q School finals, and then it's a whole different kind of stress of trying to get your status where you want it and all that kind of stuff. But man, that last day at second stage is that one takes years off your life.
Didn't you make something crazy like 10 birdies in a row one year?
So yeah, so at Q School finals 1 year, I like the fourth day I shot 62. The fourth day to go from way out of it to back in it and got full status, and then the next year I had to go back to Q School finals, and I was in like 130th or something going into the final round, and the wind was blowing like 40 at PGA National. Um, and I shot 66 and ended up, excuse me, I think I went from like 105th to 35th or something like that
Mm-hmm.
the last day to secure my full status and, get a nice paycheck there at Q School. So I definitely had some very uncommon success where I was getting through second stages when I needed to, and then shooting some ridiculous scores at Q School finals when I needed to, and unfortunately, I had to go back to second stage the next year. I missed out on top 100 that year by like $600 or something like that. I
Mm.
finished 102 on the money list, which and kind of crapped the bed at second stage, which were a couple of things that I'd been doing really well in my professional career. All things considered. And man, you just like, holy crap. I just, after a while, you kind of assume that it's all going to work out. And then all of a sudden it doesn't. And you're like, oh my God, what do I do now?
Now what? Right.
Now what? Remember that was a long drive home from Tampa.
What do you think it was? Because you obviously played exceptionally well. I mean, you won 15 times in 1 year. I mean, that's like beats Byron Nelson's record. And I don't care what tour you're playing on, but that's a lot of wins. Um, and then to go from that level to struggling to stay in the top 100
Mm-hmm.
on the nationwide / Korn Ferry,
Yep.
was it? Look, now that you've had enough time to
Mm-hmm.
digest it and run it through your head and look back, do you think it was just, as we discussed earlier, that something that maybe you're looking at it in your perspective was wrong? You just didn't have that moment like you did at the U.S. Open where it's like, look, I don't have to be perfect, and you just couldn't maintain that maybe? Or was it
Well,
something else that maybe that
yeah.
wasn't
I
quite
mean,
there?
well, you start to, my entire life, and I think it was such a benefit that I was never one of those phenoms. I was
Mm-hmm.
somebody that just kind of kept getting better and kept getting better and kept getting better. And obviously, the better you get, the harder it is to get to that next stage. Eventually you start to plateau a little bit, which is what I was doing. I still had some success. I never won or, I contended on Sunday really at a web.com tour event. I won on the Canadian tour, which was a really cool deal. But then you start getting older and you're like, okay, a lot of these guys that I played mini tour golf or played on the web.com, now they're playing on the PGA Tour and I'm still here.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden that kind of thing, okay, now I'm a little bit older, I'm 30, like now it starts to kind of get in your head like, okay, at what point do you have to say like I should probably be playing on the PGA Tour or not having to go back to Q School? You start, unfortunately, human nature, you start thinking about those kind of things. Then the what ifs. Well, shoot, what if I, lose my web.com tour card? Then what am I going to do? All those thoughts that when you're 25 and you're living for free and you're freewheeling it, none of those thoughts are ever in your head, but you start to get a little older and okay, I'm starting to become a real person now. I have a house. I've got responsibilities. I've got friends of mine that I was beating and feel like I'm better than or as good at as that are now playing on the PGA Tour. You kind of start to put all this pressure on yourself, and before you know it, you can't free up the way you used to. Um,
And as we said, that at that level, the margin for error is
it's
exceptionally
so
small.
small. It's so small, and for every one of us, then you turn around, you look at, and there's a 23-year-old guy out of college that's freewheeling it,
Mm-hmm.
hitting driver everywhere, and no demons, and like, holy crap, that used to be me. How can I go back and do that? Um, and it's kind of the evolution of things. And for me, I stuck it out. I went down and played in Latin America and played okay. and was still kind of, I still had my head in it, but then you get out there and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, okay, now I've got the chipping yips. Where did that come from? Things pop up, and for everything that pops up, it just, you start having those thoughts of, well, shoot, what if this doesn't work out, then what am I going to do? And it's a snowball.
Mm-hmm.
I always kind of pride myself. I stayed positive. I stayed realistic, and it eventually gets to the point where you gotta figure out what to do.
You played, how many PGA Tour events did you play in? Greenbrier
Uh,
was one. U.S.
yeah,
Open.
I actually had a pretty good record. I've Mondayed into Sea Island a couple of times, twice, and Jackson, Mississippi, and the Greenbrier, and a couple of U.S. Opens, and gosh, I feel like I played somewhere else too.
You made
And
the cut at
lost.
the second Open you got in, didn't you?
I did, yeah, out in Chambers Bay. Um, but yeah, lost in a few playoffs as well. I probably played about 8, I would guess.
To take everybody through what a week at the biggest stage in golf is like, that might not that might always
Hmm.
wonder what an inside perspective is.
It's a lot. It
There's a
really
lot going
is.
on, isn't there?
There's a lot going on, especially, if you kind of have a frame of reference. I just remember playing mini tour events, and when I Monday qualified for my first web.com tour event, I was like, holy crap, this is cool. There's like free stuff, and there's
The bags are on the range. Just take
yeah,
what you want.
yeah. Everybody's got staff bags, and there's an equipment trailer, and oh my God, there's putters laying out around the greens, and and it's like that times a billion. You show up, and I just remember at the airport, and they're like, here's your Lexus courtesy car, and here's your bottles of wine, and what do you need, what can we get you, and here's this, call this number if you need anything. And you go, and there's, you kind of, for the fans, you sign when you're registering, you put your name down, in slots to play practice rounds, and you look, and there's Tiger Woods, Tiger Woods, Tiger Woods. Of course, every person's thought is, should I just put my name with him and see what happens? um, but it's just, the infrastructure that they build. You go out on a Tuesday and you hit a shot in a practice round, and there's 200 people in one of the grandstands, and they're going nuts about just a goof off chip shot, and there's just people everywhere. It's so hard to describe. I mean, the first one, I never left. Like, I was so enamored with the whole experience. I never left the golf course. I was there like 24/7 every day leading up to it, because I was like, maybe I should go putt a little bit. I'll go hit a few
Well, it's like
rounds.
you're living
I'll
your
go work
dream,
on it.
right? I mean, it's
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna go see if maybe this three would, and it was awesome. And I shot a million, and yeah, I left there thinking, man, if I did got to do that again, I would do a lot of stuff differently. And that's what I did the second time. I had my whole family out there. A bunch of friends flew out there, and it was an incredible experience. And the second time, I was playing on the Korn Ferry Web.com tour, and played well in a sectional, and had to go straight from sectional to go play the next Web.com tour event. And it was out in the middle of nowhere, out in the Pacific Northwest. All my family's like, what are we gonna? And I was like, no, I don't want anybody to come. I love y'all. I don't want anybody to come. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to try my best to treat it like any other golf tournament. I don't want to have to worry about anything. I just want to be able to go do my thing, and that's it. I had a couple of buddies that were like, I don't care. You don't even have to talk to us, but we're coming. I'm like, that's fine. Y'all can come, but I'm not doing any of this.
yeah.
And
I'm not having responsibility of your
no,
being
I'm
your
not.
entertainer.
No, no. And it was awesome, and it would have been really hard. It was going to be super expensive to get out there, and I told all my family, I was like, I love y'all. I'm going to call in every day. I'll talk to you, but I'm just going to go out there, and we all got to do it and experience it out at Pebble. And this time, I'm just going to go out there and just do it. And it was great. I didn't exactly contend, but got to play on Sunday and got to play with Ernie Els on Sunday, which was really cool. And and played fairly solid. And yeah, it was just it's just there's so many people, and the vibe around the place is just it's so electric. And I just remember on the first tee of both US Opens, I was not even scared to hit a bad tee shot. I was scared to make a golf swing and look down and the ball still be on the tee. Like I've been there's nervous, and then there is I might whiff this ball nervous.
I used to have that nightmare all the time.
Yep.
And no matter how many times I swung, I'd whiff.
Yep. Yep. Or there was going to be like a giant divot and the ball still on the tee. Yep.
So what was it? How was the Big Easy to play with?
He was awesome. And he was very much over that place. Because I don't know if you remember that was a very interesting golf course with dirt greens.
Yeah, they lost the greens.
And we were in like 45th or 40th going into the final round. I remember I had 2 4-putts on Saturday. I actually played really well. I hit both par 5s and 2 and made 2 6s.
Oof.
And so we're going out, and he's like, "Get me the hell out of here! Get me on my jet and go to whatever my next tournament is." And I'm like, "Oh my God, last place here gets like 20 grand." Like,
You're trying to calculate.
Like, I'm freaking out, and so he wants to talk about anything but golf. And he's like, God, I'm playing with some dude that's just some random qualifier, and teed off early on Sunday, just get me away from this place. And I'm like grinding my balls off.
Yeah, he's playing for airplane gas money.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember like I hit the par 5 number. I birdied 16, and I hit the green in 2 on 18, this par 5, and I hit this putt up this hill, and I had probably 2.5 feet straight down the hill. And my first thought was, okay, if I miss this putt, I may have a wedge shot coming back. And my second, and I'm like, holy crap, even though I'm in 50th place, I mean, the difference between this spot and the next spot is probably a couple of $1,000, something that would never occur to Ernie Els. I'm like, well, still would be pretty cool to, birdie 2 out of the last 3 holes and make an extra couple of thousand. And, it's funny thinking back, my experience versus his on that Sunday, and I'm sitting here telling everybody, I got to play with Ernie Els and blah, blah, blah. And, he'd see me and be like, who are you? But it was cool and stuff like that. Just all the stuff and all the stress and all that stuff and that comes along with professional golf. Those kind of memories were just awesome to have.
For those that might have watched it and not understood the conditions of those greens, it's what DJ did on that last hole where he 3-putted to lose it, getting into the playoff. And you just alluded to it, that the greens were not very good. They lost them dirt.
Yep.
Could you I'm sure you more than anybody, and being above the hole, you could see maybe how he ended up doing that.
No doubt. Because everybody was talking about it, and we were sitting in a bar watching it. And I was like, I mean, he's up on that top shelf. I was like, if this putt, and he had like 12 feet or something. Mm-hmm. I was like, if this putt doesn't hit the hole, he's going to have a 4 or 5 footer coming back. Ernie had hit one from below the slope up past the hole. Now this was on a different angle, up past the hole, and it got like 6 feet past the hole and came back all the way back to below the hole. Did a U-turn past the hole and came back. And I finished 4 or 5 hours before these guys got there. Those greens were even more baked out and crusty,
trampled and everything else.
Yeah, and I had a 2-footer that from behind the hole, thinking if this lips out or power lips or something, who knows what I'm going to have coming back. I may be here all afternoon. And so when he had that putt and he 3-putted, I was like, yeah, I mean, he barely touched the first one and it went 4 feet by, and now you got a 4-footer on dirt to get into a playoff. It's not, it's easy to armchair quarterback and say, how are you leading a major 3-putt from 12 feet? But it was like I said, on Saturday, I had 30 feet for eagle on number 8 and made 6, and I had about 60 feet on 18 for eagle and made 6.
Mm.
So and it was an interesting place. It was doable.
Yeah, it's those small. And I remember what year was it? '01 that Goosen missed a short one
Hmm.
at
Yep.
Southern Hills. Very, very
Yep.
similar
And
to going
Stuart
to
Sink
play.
missed one right in front of him from
Mm-hmm.
like a foot and a half or something. Yeah.
Yeah, when the greens are that bad and it just plays with
Yeah.
your brain. And as
Yeah.
you mentioned and have gone over multiple times tonight that you start creeping into a tour pro's head, and it can that pebble can turn into a giant avalanche pretty quickly.
Yes, again.
Or detriment. I shouldn't say quickly. I said it can be detrimental.
Correct.
Just the best example of that is the first cut at Augusta, and everyone says, well, the first cut for those guys it's not that bad, and it's Augusta. How difficult can the first cut be? And I'm like, yeah, but you got to remember the greens are hitting too, and
Hmm.
they really need to hit the spots there, and all you have
Yep.
to do the worst thing you can do to a touring pro is put one shred of doubt in their head,
Correct.
right? Because
Yep.
and they're always talking about it. I didn't commit to that shot on 15, or I didn't commit to that shot here, and
Right.
that's the example
Yep.
for that caliber of player. Looking back, is there anything that you would have done differently?
Um, I mean, I think maybe later in my career, I probably could have put more effort into trying to maybe travel to play a little more around some tour guys. I loved Savannah, and there were a couple of things in my, growing up, early on, you don't really think about those kind of things. You don't have to think about those things, but definitely the more you get, I wouldn't say comfortable, but you kind of get in a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a good pattern as I was getting better and better and better. And I probably don't think I evolved later in life to try to change that pattern up as much as maybe I possibly could have. Um, but then again, I could not be happier with where I am right now. So whatever mistakes that I made in my professional golf career has gotten me to where I am right now, and in that regard, I wouldn't change a single thing. But in golf, everything works until it doesn't. And I would say I was a little stubborn in the fact that I had my routines and how I worked on my game and what worked to make me get better for so long. And when it stopped working, I was probably a little stubborn that I was going to keep hammering that and not change it.
Mm-hmm.
And there were probably some things that I could have done to put myself in more uncomfortable positions, or maybe expend a little more effort to get in some situations that maybe could have helped me adapt a little bit better. But it's kind of part of life. It's all hindsight is definitely 50-50 at the time, or 2020. At the time, I thought I was doing what I needed to be doing.
Yeah, and you alluded to that earlier that at that level it becomes very difficult to progress because you're
Yes.
getting up to the top of the mountain. There's not many up there, and
Right.
the journey, the higher you go, becomes more limited. And if you make the decision to do something that's uncomfortable and it's the wrong decision, you can take a quick spiral.
Yes.
Right, and
Very
then
much so.
Then it's a very difficult climb to get back to where you were. So it's easier for armchair golf coaches, so to speak, meaning the general public golfer, to sit there and say, "Well, Mark, if he would have done this, I know he would have
Right.
done
Yeah.
something better."
Well,
But yeah, but you're not
everybody's got an opinion.
right. You're not in his shoes, right? You don't
Right.
know the variables that he had to deal with, or what recipe would have gotten you there. If somebody had a magic wand to say, "Okay, Mark, all you got to do is tweak these two things," and you do, and then you're there. But nobody has that. Nobody knows.
Right. That's exactly right.
And the other thing is, looking back. That's why I always end that question with looking back, and I ask most every guest that comes on that, because as much as you wanted something, you with playing, myself with playing, and to play the PGA Tour, it's look, when you look back, you can connect the dots much easier to where you are now. And when you're looking forward, it's very, very difficult because you
Yes.
don't know what's in store for you, but it
Right.
will play itself out.
Exactly right.
So what's the next chapter in the book of Mark going to be about? What do you have going next?
Oh man, well, other than semi-pro pickleball, no, I got a cool job opportunity. I luckily for me, and doing what we do, you meet a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back in hindsight, I was glad that when I went to college, I took my studies seriously. You know, it's always kind of the old person to the young person. Make sure you get your college degree and all that kind of crap. And as it turns out, it's actually true. So I, and so I kind of always try to do things the right way and talk to people. And when you meet people at pro-ams and you engage, and I always kind of had that appreciation for events and pro-ams and things like that. That hey, yeah, sometimes you're like, I really don't want to have to do this, but without these kind of things, there there are no golf tournaments. So after a while, you develop some skills, and luckily for me, that there are some jobs that um, have that those skills apply for, and and so I got to meet some people that saw those skills as something valuable and decided to hire me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working right now for some guys that do some work in estate planning and investment banking, and um, I'm really enjoying it. And I get to use kind of those skills that I developed throughout professional golf to apply to a new phase in life.
It's awesome. It like I said, it you can connect the dots back. You can see how your golfing ability and the way that you work with people, as you said, they're doing the right thing, it has led you to this. It's just that's why it's a preface it with what's the next chapter. Um,
Right.
it's a continual book until uh, we no longer walk the planet, walk the face of the earth. Here, one question before we'll do some rapid fire here shortly and get you
Sure.
going. I have to ask you about the golf bag that you had get run over by an airport baggage car. Thank you, Mr. Clemens, for that. Sending us that question to ask Mark.
Okay. So wasn't an airport baggage car. It was a maintenance car in Panama. I was we had this terrible winter here, and the first event of the web.com tour season was in Panama. So I flew down like Sunday afternoon. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get a good practice session in on Monday, play my maybe go play 9 holes, and and kind of ease into the week. So we get out there on Monday afternoon, and I'm like, hey, a couple of my buddies, we're gonna go play. So um, we get to the fourth hole, and after the fourth hole, you got to walk up this giant hill to get to number five tee box. So my bag's laying on the ground, my caddy's walking around, looking at hole placements and stuff like that. So I finished. I went to go put my putter in my bag, and I was going to start up the hill. And I leaned over to put my putter in my bag, and I hear somebody say, "Watch out!" And out of the corner of my eye, I see something, and I jump back, and a maintenance cart towing a lawnmower is coming like 100 miles an hour, barely misses me, clobbers, drives over all three sets of tires, over my golf bag, across the front of the green, down another hill, and crashes into this fence along the side of this canal that ran along the right side of the fairway. And I look up, and there's this worker up there with his hands up in the air. And I was like, what just happened? And I pick up my golf bag. All of my head covers just collapse. My driver's in 3 pieces, my 3 woods in 2 pieces. This is my first day down here, first tournament of the year. And my bag's all wonky. And all the guys in my group were like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" I was like, if I'd have been 6 inches closer to my golf bag, I'd be decapitated right now. And so picked up everything, walked straight to the driving range. There are no equipment trailers down there, but my TaylorMade rep was down there, and he had just a suitcase with some couple of heads and shafts, and he was like, "Hey, what do you need?" I was like, "All new woods." So that was interesting. I actually played okay that week, but yeah, I had to get a lot of stuff rebuilt once I did get back to the United States.
Well, that's good. It was replaceable.
Yes,
Cool.
my head is not.
What happened to the cart? Did the guy lose brakes, or what was the deal?
I guess he had parked it on the hill and put the emergency, the parking brake on, and I guess it popped off the emergency brake is all I could think about. I didn't speak English, so he didn't say anything to us as he walked by. But yeah, I guess it came off the brakes, and he had hopped out of the cart and was waiting on us to finish putting, and it just trucked on down this hill and almost took me out.
God, couldn't even imagine. I mean, like I told Tim, it's hard enough playing professional golf well, I never went outside of the country. It's hard for me. It was hard enough playing, getting around, driving, looking at. This was before MapQuest and iPhones or anything.
Right.
And the big atlas in the back seat that you pull out, and okay, I'm on I-10, I-95, 75, all those the highways. I couldn't imagine going to another country where you don't even speak the language.
Right. Yeah. It is interesting. Very, very interesting. Those first couple of events every year in Panama and Bogota, and then had a couple of years where we played in Brazil, and Chile. There was always something happened to somebody.
All right, let's want to wrap up some rapid fire. Got emergency 9, I call it.
Okay.
And then get you going and enjoy your evening. So, if you were, let's say you went and Mondayed into something and you won and got on a hot streak and you qualified for the Ryder Cup.
Yep.
What would be your walk-up song to the first tee?
Sandstorm, which is what they play University of South Carolina football games to get the fans fired up.
There you go. Gamecock in your blood still.
Yep.
Speaking of songs, what's the last song that was stuck in your head?
The last song that was stuck in my head, probably Hey Jude.
It'll probably be stuck in there the rest of the night. You're going to
Yep.
cursing me up and down at 4:00 in the morning when you wake up.
Yep. You enjoy that.
You played a lot of golf courses. What's the best one you've ever played?
I'm a Georgia boy. Augusta National.
You have played Augusta. Very cool.
I have. Yep.
Yeah, that'd be.
Yep. That's Mecca.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Dream foursome, and it cannot be porn stars.
Oh, no, I gotta think about this.
But anybody, past or present, golfers, anyone you want to play with.
Now that I'm older and a little wiser, and to be sentimental, I would probably say my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Spurrier, Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters.
Mm-hmm.
And
you'd be the fourth.
And
then you.
Oh yeah,
you're the fourth.
There you go. Yeah, I wouldn't even say any golfers.
That's a pretty cool one.
Yeah.
Let's see, a couple more. Tin Cup or Caddyshack?
Caddyshack. I hate Tin Cup.
Last book that you read?
The last book that I read was actually, believe it or not, a business book called The Game of Numbers.
Yep. Cool. Mm-hmm. Is it kind of like, was it Billy Bean, that sort of thing with the baseball?
More or less. Yeah, a little, not quite as quantitative, but yeah.
Let's see. If there was an emoji stamped on your clubs, what would it be?
The emoji. Ugh. Probably the flexing arm. Always give that to people when I hit a good shot, just to get at them a little bit.
Show them your guns.
That's right.
There we go.
Or lack thereof.
Cats or dogs?
Yes. I actually have a cat randomly that found his way into my house, but I'd pet a squirrel if it let me pet it.
I'm a big animal guy too.
Yeah.
And then the last one, the goat, Tiger or Jack?
Tiger.
Jeez, that was probably the quickest one I've got.
Yeah, I mean, I it's just being in the Tiger and seeing what he did. It's pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to argue. I mean, what he did was just mind-boggling.
It really is now, especially that we're a little bit removed from it. Going back and looking at it, it is astounding.
Mm-hmm. I agree. All right. It's been great. Great to catch up. Next time, and we talked about this before. I'll be hopefully playing over there soon. I'll give you a shout, and we can hang out, have lunch, have beers, play, cut up some more, and tell some more stories.
Look forward to it.
Awesome, Mark. You have a great night. I'm sure everyone's going to love this one.
Sounds good, man. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed it, you can find more information on today's episode and other topics at golf360.blog. There you'll find the show notes and links related to this episode, as well as any other episode that we've done so far to date. If you're interested in improving your game and would like to learn more from yours truly by taking a private lesson, a half-day or multi-day school, club or putter fitting, you can reach me through the blog site or by email, pete@golf360.blog. So some of you may be asking, what is the golf paradigm? All you have to do is click on the homepage while on my blog site to discover how you can start playing better than you ever thought possible. Or you can simply sign up, again, on the blog page for my instructional videos where I give regular tips on all areas of the game to include the swing, club design and fitting, health, fitness and nutrition, the mental aspects, and equally as important, the integration of all those things together. I'm also on social media, and you can find me at The Golf Paradigm. That's PARADIGM, and I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also under the same name, The Golf Paradigm. Facebook is usually the best way to reach me for questions and or comments, and I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say. This podcast is brought to you in part by Old South Golf Links. A short ride across a bridge from Hilton Head Island is one of the area's finest golf courses and a hidden treasure. Set up on towering pines and ancient oaks with sweeping marsh vistas, truly makes Old South Golf Links a one-of-a-kind golfing experience. The Clyde Johnson design was named one of the top 10 new public courses when it opened, and it also takes full advantage of the natural beauty of the Low Country. Old South is a fun and unique challenge for golfers of every skill level and a favorite of both locals and visitors. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, you'll be treated and feel like family. From the bag drop to check-in at the fully stocked pro shop with both men's and women's apparel, to breakfast or lunch before or after your round, the staff is always ready and willing to help. Experience for yourself why Old South is one of the premier golf courses in the Hilton Head area and why it will quickly become a favorite of yours too. Visit them in person or online at www.oldsouthgolf.com, or to make it tee time, simply call the pro shop at 843-785-5353.